Cause the devil is a lie, I'm telling you the truth, it's only what you do, the things you gotta do, Hey, barbershop conversation, guys. Feel free, hit the subscribe button. So let's talk to the bigger picture of what I saw with the Sean Porter numbers. That's scary. I'm just going to be 100% honest with you. That shit is scary as it pertains to the entire sport of boxing. But before we get into it, don't forget we go live Sunday to Thursday night, 9 o'clock Pacific Standard Time, PM. And next Tuesday, we start our concert series. First artist is Hope. Bring your girl, bring your brown paper bag, bring something to smoke. We're going to have a great time and vibe out, man. And where are we? And yeah. So feel free to come on in and so follow me on Instagram. Follow me on Instagram, man. Sean Porter came in at 800,000 views. Jamal James came in at 1 million views, 1.1 million views. And the fact that boxing as a whole is declining and that Sean Porter is a declining asset when he worked on Fox for 2 years tells us that boxing is in perils. Boxing is a niche sport. It's a homeboy sport. It's not a mainstream sport. It's a mainstream sport when mainstream fighters fight. Outside of that, keep in mind, there's hundreds of fights every weekend, whether you're in Baja, Mexico, or San Diego, Los Angeles, Tulsa, Oklahoma. So understand that, okay? And it's just not a niche sport. Boxing will continue to go on because people that don't live in major cities always thrive on entertainment, and concerts and major artists don't go to like rural North Dakota, South Dakota, Montana. So that's how they make a living. They put on boxing events and events like that. Small artist performs and they get paid, and that's the reality of it. And if the best don't fight the best, you're going to see a consistent decline until something shocks the sport. And I don't know what that shock is. Deontay Wilder beats Tyson Fury. Deontay Wilder versus Anthony Joshua will definitely propel the sport, as it pertains to America. I can definitely see that happening. Errol Spence, Terrence Crawford, I don't think it propels the sport. It just gets people like me excited because of the profiles of both. I don't think that Terrence Crawford has done his part in building that fight up. But I'll just say this. I'm going to get into the nitty gritty of it, and fighters got to fully understand what I'm saying. And I'm going to give you guys maybe 1 or 2 tips. I'm not going to give everything. Join the Patreon, Barbershop Conversations on Patreon. PBC fighters got to understand. Al Haymon is a content provider. Al Haymon's job is to go into Fox, or one of Al Haymon's jobs, excuse me. Who is that? Lincoln? No. Or Kennedy. Who's that? Lincoln? That's Kennedy.
What's my pointy?
It's downstairs. And just woke up from nap time. And Al Haymon is a content provider. One of his jobs is a content provider. So what he does, he goes into Fox, negotiate the money, and say, hey, I can give you this for X amount of dollars. I don't think Al Haymon is an expert at building fighters' profiles on a day-to-day basis. He's an expert at building profiles by consistent use, by giving you prime time slots and using a major network like Fox and what Showtime was 5 years ago and what HBO was a decade ago. That's what he does. And fighters don't understand. Fighters think that because they get $1 million check that they're famous. And now all these major fights are going to have to go on pay-per-view because the return on boxing is not what it was. And fans need to hold their ground. Fans, you need to hold your ground because these fighters are not getting I saw you, Lincoln. these fighters, these fighters are not getting what they feel they earn or deserve because the fans are not there. And what do fans do? Pay money. So until we can get the best fighting the best, why should we pay? Let's call a buck a buck. Why should we as consumers? I don't talk to fighters every day. I talk to more fans and consumers and supporters of the channel than I talk to fighters. I have a relationship with fighters, but as a whole, if we don't get the best fighting the best, why should we pay? And this pandemic has taught us a lot about the importance of fans. All right. Boxing need fans. And just to give one example of that, Terrence Crawford said he's not taking a pay cut during COVID because there are no fans. So it can't happen. His fights can't happen. So I think during COVID, a couple of things we learned is that boxing is 100% contingent upon the fans. All right. There's a duality between boxer and fan. Okay. And fans have realized this for a long time, but boxers have failed to realize that. You understand what I'm saying? So at the end of the day, I think fighters got to understand that Al Haymon, Bob Arum are content creators at the end of the day. Their job is to convince you to sign this contract for X amount of dollars. Your job is to build your brand. And if you don't build your brand, and if you're not one of the best, people don't want to see you. People are not interested in you. And Sean Porter is a great example of that. No matter how many times Al Haymon thrusts him up to an event, people don't want to see him. People only want to see Sean as the opponent. And you don't want to fall prey to situations like this. All right. I think boxers as a whole will have to take a pay cut. Boxers as a whole will have to do more PR than they've ever done before. I would, if you have the ability, the luxury to hire a marketing person, I would suggest that you do, because they have to work when you're wrestling. They have to work when you're training. That 4-hour window when you're training, someone needs to be marketing you. Fighters can only do so much. Fighters honestly are above, at least they feel they're above, emailing and making phone calls and connecting with a person like me. Hey, I got 3 to 3:15. You want to hire fighter? You want to interview fighter A from 3 to 3:15? Oh, sure, definitely, I'll be ready. And then you gotta from 3:20 to 3:35, I have fighter A to the next person, the next person, the next person. Fighters don't do that per se. They just post on Instagram, Facebook, and drop a tweet here and there and think that that's enough. That's not enough, because if Lincoln isn't asking me about a fight, if Lincoln don't know your name and who is my son, then you have to push. So I think PBC fighters are in a conundrum right now because they've had a great run now. PBC fighters, you've had a great run at this, and the credit deserves to be Al Haymon for generating this revenue and being Robin Hood in terms of finances. You understand? And taking the finances out of Fox, Showtime, and Bounce, and he paid for those, and taking it to the fighters. And Al Haymon needs to go in all these fighters' Hall of Fame. I don't care if you're Mexican, black, white. Under Al Haymon, at some point you need to bow to the almighty Al Haymon, because he's financially changed your life. Now, what you're not doing, what you haven't done with the millions of dollars that Al Haymon has blessed you with, you haven't set aside or allocated promotional money to promote yourself. That's what these PBC fighters have not done. So if you make $100,000, right? Let's say you clear $100,000. I don't feel like dealing with the taxes and stuff like that and training stuff. You clear $100,000, 20,000 of it should go towards PR. 20%. Why not? You know what I mean? Whether it's making a short film, you drop it once every 2 weeks, or whether it's hanging out with your favorite rapper for a day, y'all go to lunch and y'all do Instagram videos and y'all talk, you know what I mean? Or you get in a music video like Andre Berto and Zab Judah used to do, or whether you like to cook like Andre Berto, whether you do a YouTube channel like you like to cook, or one of your hobbies like you like to play the guitar, or or you're an avid reader. You build an audience that way. There's so many different ways. That's just a small postulate or small examples of things that you can do. So the mail's here. So I think that as a whole, boxers you got to build your brand. You're competing with LeBron James, Tom Brady, the quarterback from Baltimore, Jackson. Whew. I'm talking about, man, it's only 4 or 5 fighters that can go across the bottom line at ESPN on a Tuesday afternoon. It's only a handful of them. Outside of that, y'all got to earn that. And because you haven't, you guys got to start building your brand. I think Al Haymon, for real, in terms of PBC fighters, has done a lot in terms of getting y'all the money. And that's just based off a private conversation I've had with fighters. I've never had a conversation with Al Haymon, just the fighters that work for PBC fighters. Y'all got to wake up. PBC fighters better wake up. All right. Start promoting yourself. Okay. And the one tip I will give you is when you go to negotiate a contract. All right. Everything is on deck when you're negotiating a contract. Okay, let's say, for example, they want fighter A to fight November 19th on Fox. Well, in that contract, let's say, hey, I want a trip to Disneyland for a family of 4. Done. That's not what I'm telling you to do, but I'm just giving you guys an example. Hey, I want to go eat in Bali for 3 days. Hey, I want my food to be imported from Nagasaki. You know what I mean? So I'm just giving you guys an example that you can be as extreme with your requests as possible. And one of the requests I would suggest that fighters make, here's another gem. Y'all guys need to join my Patreon, $5 a month. It's basically free. Is you need to put a second fight in that contract with a date. Because if you don't, the time is going to get further and further, and only the top tier fighters are going to be fighting. And next time they call you, like, well, we don't have much money for you because it's shrinking. I'm telling you, it's shrinking. So if you have the toughness or the guile and the fearlessness to say, hey, I want a 2-fight deal before this. And that's what a lot of fighters do, because boxing is an ignorant sport, and that means not knowing. So that means you have, like, everyone gets a windfall when that fighters become successful, because typically they go to high school. Many of them don't go to college for the most part. There are exceptions to this rule. And you spend your weekends fighting. You don't spend your weekends in the library. You don't spend your weekends writing term papers. You don't spend your weekends studying for the bar. Let's just call a spade a spade. So ignorant is not knowing. So you're unbeknownst to how to do contracts. So that means the guy that's coming up with you is learning how to do contracts when you are presented your first contract. When you're a 15-year-old amateur trainer, when you turn pro at 19 after you come back from the Olympics, that's literally all y'all that's your first time interacting with Floyd Mayweather and getting the contract. So everything is like brand new, right? And that's the problem that boxing has as a whole. So, and the second problem is that's where the sharks come in, that's where the sharks come in at, where I'm not going to put a color on them, but everyone has a shark, and they say, hey, I've done this before. Here's the contract. You take this. And next thing you know, you're being bribed, you're being conned, and there's nothing you can do because the language in the contract supports them. So I would say PBC fighters, you start building your brand. Sean Porter, this is the great example I can give. Sean Porter did 800,000 on Fox with no competition. Baseball is non-existent. The only competition he had was the Lakers versus the Portland Trail Blazers. So I think that And boxing, you're going to have that regardless. You're going to have that regardless on a Saturday. So that's normal competition. There was no college football, no NFL preseason. So boxing should be taking a chance and begin to thrive, from the top to bottom. But I only know the fighters, so but y'all got to do your part. Fighters got to do your part. You better start building your brand, because I told y'all in March it's going to begin to get skinny out here. Barbershop Conversations, man. Feel free, hit the subscribe button. I'll talk to you guys soon. Peace.